Welcome back, everybody. I am an avid herpetologist, back a day sooner than I expected. Thankfully, during work today, I was greeted with a wonderful text message from Spectrum that my internet had been restored, and gratefully I got home to find they were indeed correct. I am finally back online after a week of being without internet and Wi-Fi, and I'm incredibly excited to finally be back into doing videos. And we're going to be starting off this week's video with a topic that I know I have been super excited about and a lot of you guys have been super excited about as well. We're going to be talking BT10 format Machinedramon. Now, Machinedramon, as most of you know, is going to be my pet deck. It is the deck that I have spent the most hours by far putting in at different local level events. It is my favorite deck of all time and going to be continuing to be my favorite deck moving all the way up through BT11. So up to currently shown spoilers, it will be my pet deck here moving forward. And as a result of that, I'm really looking forward to talking with you guys as we move from one format to the next at how the deck is going to evolve and change as things progress. To begin this video, I'm actually going to be talking about 4 different sections. We're going to start by talking about cards that are going to be entering the card pool from BT10 that I think Machinedramon can make good use of. Those 5 are already on the screen. And then we're going to be talking about my examples of 3 different brews that I think are potentially usable for Machinedramon in this coming format. Now, as a disclaimer, these are all test builds. I have not actually play tested any of them just yet. These are brainstorming ideas that I've had based on my own experiences and predictions based on what I know is going to be coming down the pipeline for the coming format. These are all open to change. They're all open to tweaking. Please do not take these builds as a hard science. I'm basically just trying to start getting some rough brews together, especially knowing that all 5 of the new support cards are actually going to be legal starting on this coming Friday. So we actually get a full week or so with these cards before the rest of BT10 hits. So I'm going to go ahead and just get right into things here. To begin with, we're going to talk about, as I mentioned, the first 5 cards that I really think Machinedramon is going to be able to make good use of in this coming format. That's not to say that there aren't other cards that Machinedramon might want to be able to make use of now, including some old cards that might see new usage, but these are, in my opinion, the big 5 cards that are candidates to see use in the new Machinedramon archetype. Some of them are guarantees, you absolutely want to run them, others maybe not so much. But as I mentioned, all of these, except for I think maybe the Quake, the removal spell there, are going to be at least in some part involved in the 3 lists that I'm mentioning. So we're going to go through all of them and kind of talk about synergies and why we want to adjust things the way that we do. To begin with, the 2 big cards that we definitely need to talk about are these 2 right here. We have Jakurimon and Solarmon. Now, these 2 cards are actually color swapped versions of each other. What that means, for those of you unfamiliar, color swap just basically means, or color shifted, they're basically the same card, just in a different color. These are both 3 to play. They both have 3000 DP, 0 to Digivolve, and have the exact same in-play effect, where neither player is able to reduce play costs. Now, this is a very, very valuable Floodgate effect, especially going into this new format. Some notable things that this is going to stop: it will prevent cost reduction as a result of D-Reaper. It will reduce cost reductions for Starmon, and the 2 big things that it's really going to help with is going to make sure that Digicross cannot reduce their effects. So the new Digicross mechanic coming out, it will help Floodgate that so they cannot reduce play costs, and Death Xmon. This is finally a solid answer to make sure that Death Xmon cannot come down for any cheaper than 20, or of course the 6 Digivolve cost. So this is the first time we've really had a good, solid answer to Death Xmon, at least in this deck. Now, as a disclaimer again, this Floodgate has existed, but currently, prior to these structure decks, the only other Floodgate that does this is Psychmon in purple. So having access to both the red and black versions of this are huge, as red and black are probably going to be the 2 primary bases that Machinedramon uses going forward. Now, Jakurimon, unfortunately, is not a machine or cyborg, so it is worth mentioning since I know my black build has heavily focused on the machine and cyborg synergies. Unfortunately, Jakurimon is not going to benefit from those, but I do think it is valuable enough to still warrant up to a 4 of in a lot of the current upcoming lists. Very, very important to have this Floodgate effect. Solarmon is the same way, but it's actually worth mentioning Solarmon is a machine. So if you do decide to go red base, Solarmon might actually be a reason to add extra copies of Kazu to your deck, which I think is really cool. So you can actually build a red base with the Digimon package, include some copies of Solarmon, and you still might actually have reason to be playing more than just a couple copies of Kazu if you want to go for those synergies. Super cool there. Now, the next card that I think is going to make huge waves in this next format is the brand new Sistermon Blanc. Now, this Sistermon is 3 to play, 3000 DP. Because it is white, it does not have a Digivolution cost. It has 2 effects, but we're only really worried about the first one. It's a generic on play by trashing any card in your hand, draw 2. So this is basically going to be 4 more copies of EX1 Hagurumon. The difference is, well, there's a couple of differences, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. On the plus side, this is able to come down and trash any card. So any bonus tamers you don't want to have to play, option cards, really anything. Anything you want in your hand, you can trash and draw 2. So it's really good for helping to churn through your deck a little bit faster. The downside is because this is a white Digimon, no matter what base you're in, all it's ever going to be is an on-play that you cannot Digivolve onto. So that is something to keep in mind here if you're deciding to play Sistermon Blanc. And a couple of my lists are going to be running 4 copies of Sistermon Blanc. I do think she is absolutely strong enough to see play, especially in Machinedramon, where churning through the deck quickly is something we definitely want to be doing. With that being said, not all versions of Machinedramon are going to want this card because of the reasons that I just mentioned. Unfortunately, she does not have certain synergies that the deck is really looking for. Not being a black Digimon can be very problematic. You cannot Digivolve onto her. She's also not going to gain synergies. For instance, if you happen to try out the black memory setting Izzy Azumi, if you're playing copies of her, Izzy is going to be inherently worse because now you're losing more white or more spots that should be black in your deck, so you're less likely to gain the memory when you play Izzy, in which case it's just a 4-drop memory setter with no other effects. So like I said, not all versions of Machinedramon I think are going to want to play Sistermon Blanc, but she is definitely strong and definitely a card you need to be considering if you are thinking about building Machinedramon in BT10. Next up is a card no excuses, no exceptions. Every Machinedramon deck is going to want this new card. This is the brand new Volcanomon. Now, this Volcanomon is 8 to play, 9000 DP, which is a nice high number, 4 to Digivolve from a red or a black, has blocker while it's in play, which means your level 5s actually have the ability to get blocker in play. So always having some big, especially bigger and beefier blocker bodies is super nice. And the inheritable is a generic security +1. This is a phenomenal addition to Machinedramon Cyborg pool. You should absolutely be playing one. Considerable to play more than one, maybe 2, but you absolutely will always, forever and ever, want to play at least 1 copy of this Volcanomon moving forward. It is a phenomenal card. It is very powerful in the level 5 slot, both in play and in inheritables. So yes, Volcanomon you are going to want to play no matter what build of Machinedramon you're running. The last card, again, I haven't really found a good use for just yet, but I do want to just talk about, because especially for committed black bases, this is going to be a new form of removal that is an alternative to Ultimate Flare. Now, I do think Ultimate Flare is going to be a lot better in this coming format than it was last format, not only because X-Digivolution may be a little less common, so Ultimate Flare is more likely to hit things easier, but it's also going to be able to hit things, like I mentioned, Crossheart and other of those Digicross decks, and be able to hopefully go down and hit things like rookies earlier and be able to knock those stacks off. Even if you can't, being able to Digivolve off some of the materials so they can't save them on deletion is going to be very, very powerful in this coming format. But this is basically just a slightly weaker version of Gaia Force. It's 7 to play. The alternate casting cost doesn't really matter. It's just delete one of your opponent's Digimon, play cost 13 or less. So it is, like I said, a bit of a weak, slightly weaker Gaia Force. There's certain things it's not going to be able to hit, Deathexmon, of course, being a notable one, but this is absolutely a very good, very serviceable option card. So if you are in a black, solid black list and you are looking for just hard removal as one of your slots, Quake Blast Fire Father, what a name, is definitely worth considering. So you may find a spot in your deck that you want to use this card in. With that, we are going to wrap up our 5 introductory cards here, and we're going to move into our first deck list that I have built, and it's actually a red base for Machinedramon. So this is going to be my personal take on red base Machinedramon for the BT10 format. There's going to be a couple of changes that I've made from previous lists, and I'm going to talk a little bit about those, including our Cyborg lineups, but let's just go ahead and get into it. To begin with, of course, you are going to be playing the bread and butter of the red package. That's going to be 4 Digimon as your eggs and 4 Guilmon in your rookie slots. The ability to just draw 2 is incredibly powerful. I definitely undersold and did not give this package its proper credit in my Machinedramon deep dive video. This is a very powerful combo. With that being said, it is also not without its weaknesses. Unfortunately, you are only able to play 4 copies of that Guilmon. Now, you may play other copies of Guilmon if you so choose in order to get the Digimon inheritable more frequently, but realistically, you're not going to want to do that. And the thing that makes the swing with your Guilmon so worth it is drawing 2 cards. So I think for me personally, if I was going to run this list, I'm still going to keep it with just those 4 Guilmon in my rookie slots for red specifically. With that being said, you can also see I am including my full 8 official copies of my discard 1, draw 2s, being the 4 EX1 Hagurumon and the 4 copies of Sistermon Blanc. These 12 cards in rookie slots are going to churn through your deck incredibly fast. That is going to be the big benefit of playing red-based Machinedramon, especially now with Sistermon Blanc, is you are going to be drawing cards so quickly. There, again, are going to be some downsides. You're not always going to see Guilmon in your opening hand, and without him, you are going to have to pay probably a decent amount of memory if you want to actually get off of the ground in your first couple of turns. So that is something that is definitely worth keeping in mind. There are going to be some option cards we're going to get to in just a minute, some other cheap-to-play things, so you're not just playing either rookies or ultimates. There are other options that you have, but we're going to go ahead and get into our ultimate lineup. So I am, for the most part, keeping a very similar list to what I've run in the past. We're, of course, running 2 Andromon, 3 Metal Tyranno, still just 1 copy of Megadramon for diversity, so we'll have 3 blocker and 3 reboot inheritables. That is still vitally important moving forward. Continuing on, we do also have, of course, still 2 copies of BT8 Metal Greymon for that attack unsuspended, but we are going to go up to 2 copies of BT9 Megadramon. In this coming format, especially with Digicross, but also with a couple of other archetypes, including any antibody list sticking around, 3-cost tamers and below are about to become much more prevalent. This Megadramon is about to gain big-time stock. If you have not picked up your shiny pre-release copies of this card yet, you may have already missed the boat. I know this card has started to go up. People are trying to pick up foils for this and other decks. I thankfully have my 2 copies already. I got them a long time ago, not going to lie. So I'm ready to go there, but you're probably going to want to run more than 1 copy of this guy. Now, that absolutely may change. It's going to depend on how the meta shapes up. But for me personally, I am absolutely starting this coming meta by playing 2 copies of Megadramon. I think it is absolutely worth it. I think he has earned his spot here. He's also, of course, able to pop 3-cost or lower Digimon, which is going to still be helpful board clear. You may notice I have cut Metal Mamemon from my list, especially in red base, because we're not going to be Digivolving into it at all. And the attack and destroy something 5 play cost or less, I didn't think was going to be quite as important this current format, so that is why I've omitted him, and we are going to be running 2 copies of this Megadramon. We are, by the way, going to be running 16 level 5s total in this list, in case you were curious. Coming up next are going to be our 2 DP gainers. I think these, again, are probably going to be sticking around for quite a while moving forward. The plus 3,000 inheritable Metal Greymon is not going anywhere. That is still, up until, again, our most recent spoilers, the best DP inheritable that we have as far as our cyborgs in our level 5 slot. Now, Megadramon, on the other hand, he is still going to be good for BT10. Moving into EX3, I think there's going to be some lists that may actually drop this Megadramon in place of the new Cyberdramon, but we're going to get to him in the future. He's still a little ways down the line, but there is a new Cyberdramon coming with an inheritable that I think might be good enough to replace this Megadramon with. But you're still going to want to have at least 2 of your DP gain inheritables. Next up is going to be, I believe this is BT7 Metal Greymon. Yes, BT7. So this Metal Greymon is nice because, first of all, it is cheaper to play than your other level 5s. So as long as you have a Tamer in play when he comes down, he will gain you back 2 memory, making him a 5-drop to play, which is super nice. So he's not something that has to sit in your hand, but he actually has another ability where if you play him and don't have a Tamer in play, you can actually play a red Tamer from your hand for free. And we are going to be running some copies of Hero in this deck, so even though that's not a synergy that's going to be coming up super often, that is absolutely something to keep in mind as a very powerful play. That inheritable of when you delete something on your opponent's side of the field, gain a memory, is still going to be super good. It is only on your turn, but you have effects such as Chaosdramon, and you can see we are going to be running some removal in this particular list. So I think that Metal Greymon is definitely worth the slot in this coming format. I've also chosen to run a copy single of EX1 Megadramon, the one on play that lets you delete up to 2 of your opponent's Digimon 3000 DP or less, so it's got a decent on-play effect from your hand. And of course, the inheritable of, while this Digimon is a machine, it gains security attack +1. So another one of those security +1 inheritables. Basically helps to let you shred through your opponent's security a little quicker and hopefully close the game out in a more timely fashion. We are still going to be running a single copy of the Piercing Machinedramon, again with a nice in-play effect where on attacking you can delete, as long as it's attacking your opponent's security, can delete one of your opponent's Digimon 4000 DP or less, so more board control, and inheritable while the Digimon is a Dragonkin or a machine, also gains Piercing, so super helpful. We are going to finish up our Cyborg lineup with that one-of copy of the new Volcanomon, as I mentioned. Now, we are, of course, still running our 4 copies of Machinedramon. That is not going to change, as far as I'm aware, for quite a long time. And I am still opting to run 3 copies of Chaosdramon. Now, in this particular list, I think it's actually okay if you want to cut one of those copies and go down to 2. I think that's completely fine. Just because since we are not going to be building stacks quite as frequently, the only time you're really going to want to be Digivolving into Chaosdramon is going to be on top of your already in play Machinedramons, which is not a bad play, but you're probably not going to be doing that quite as frequently. So if you want to cut that for maybe like an extra copy of Fireball, extra Ultimate Connection, really whatever you'd like to, I think that is completely reasonable. So just something to keep in mind there. I'm also opting to play a single copy of Death Xmon. Until this card gets banned, I think it is good enough that decks that are looking for flex spots, he is going to be one of the best cards for those flex spots. He is still just insanely generically powerful, and that's not going to change going into the next format. Well, I'm still running 3 copies of Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, and I am opting to bring back 3 copies of Ultimate Connection. Now, I did not like this card last format in my personal list, which was a black base build stack Machinedramon deck, just because it is kind of pigeonholed to where you have to discard a level 5 machine specific or level 5 cyborg specifically in order to use its effect, and I wasn't a big fan of that. With that being said, in this list in particular, unlike Black Base, between your Guilmon draws, Fireball draws, and now Sistermon Blanc draws on top of EX1 Hagurumon, you have a lot of just generic draw power. So it's a lot more likely you're going to have those level 5s in your hand because you are just generically drawing cards a little more frequently, and you're not really as concerned about holding specific levels in your hand because you're, again, not building stacks. So that is going to be one of the benefits of Red Base. I do think Red Base is going to be a little more glass cannon-y, in the sense that I think this deck is going to have an incredibly powerful early game, but I do think it's going to start falling off once you get into the late game. I think this deck is a little less setup oriented and more just turboing through a lot of draw power very early, very fast. Once you start getting into the point where your opponent is able to set up, I think they're going to start being able to out-advantage you as a result of that. So that's one of the things that I want to make sure you guys keep in mind when you're going to build Machinedramon decks. Every variant that you're building, every different version, different base, they're all going to have their strengths and their weaknesses. I think this is an incredibly powerful base moving forward, but it is not without its weaknesses, just like every other base is. So do just keep that in mind as you move and start to piece together the cards that you want to be using. In this list, I am also playing 2 copies of a removal spell. I'm opting for Dark Gaia Force because you have a good solid blend of both black and red cards. You're more likely to be able to hard cast this from your hand, and it is by far the best removal spell you're going to be able to slot into outside of pure Gaia Force, I suppose, but even then, Dark Gaia Force has a lot of advantages over it. We are, of course, also still going to be playing 3 copies of Fireball. Fireball is an incredibly helpful option card for only 2 memory that lets you delete one of your opponent's Digimon 3000 DP or less. If they do not have anything to delete, draw 2 cards. So it's basically just 2 memory, draw 2, that's it. Helps you remove some pesky memory, floodgates, and things like that as well, just as a side note, but you're mostly playing it for that draw power. Now, I am still playing 3 Tamers. I am sticking to memory setters in particular, just because, unfortunately, outside of our Ultimates and our Hagurumon, we're not playing a whole lot of machines and cyborgs, unless, of course, you have your Machinedramons themselves in play. So, sadly, as much as I hate to do it, no copies of Kazu in this particular list. I don't think he's super, super good for the list. Kazu, you really want to get that memory gain every chance that you can. And if you're relying on Machinedramon to get your Kazu Suspend effect to draw and discard, you're already set up well enough that you're not going to need it. So Machinedramon's probably already in play, already has its inheritables. You don't need to worry about Kazu's tap effect quite as much. It's more good for setup, in my personal opinion. But we are going to be running 1 Kiyoshiro, which lets you draw a card when you're level 5 or higher's attack, and 2 copies of Hero, which is another DP gain effect to give plus 2,000 to your level 5 or higher's when they attack as well. So basically, it's going to let your Machinedramon and Chaosdramons swing over pesky things, and just basically give the deck the ability to crest certain hills later on in the game. But anyways, that is going to do it for my brief overview of my red Machinedramon list. We're going to move on to my first ever black Machinedramon list. All right, so our first black Machinedramon list is a little bit different than the list that I've run before. And there's also a couple of new cards that I'm really interested to try out in this deck that I have not tried before. But I think the synergies are going to be really helpful in this new format. To begin with, much as it pains me, we are still running 4 Pagumon as our eggs. We still do not have any better eggs coming out for black base, unless, of course, you want to run Hotmon if you are running black tamers. But we are still, of course, running our 4 copies of Hagurumon. This particular list, I'm opting to run, again, those 4 copies of Sistermon Blanc for that pure dig power. But as our last egg, we're going to be running 4 copies of the new Chikurimon. Now, the benefit of playing a black base like this is this gives us 8 eggs instead of 4 that we can digivolve on, or 8 level 3s that we can digivolve onto our eggs. So it's going to be able to give us things in the raising area a little more consistently, which also potentially lets us build stacks in our raising area a little more consistently. Additionally, we are going to be trying a new card out in our level 4 slot, one that I think I have been sleeping on 100%, and I'm sure a lot of people have as well. That is this handsome guy right here. This is Machinedramon. Now, Machinedramon is a card I had honestly forgotten existed, had not given it a second thought up until this point. But I think this card is actually going to get really good for a couple of actually particular reasons. So this guy is only 4 to play, which is pretty cheap for a champion, 5,000 DP and 2 to digivolve, so pretty average stats. It has Decoy Black, which means anytime one of your other black Digimon would be deleted by an effect, you may instead delete this Digimon. The reason I think that is so valuable is the value of our new Floodgate Chikurimon. If Chikurimon is hanging around and is helping to prevent your opponent from going off, you want to make sure that Chikurimon is stuck there and cannot be removed. Machinedramon is a great method of protection to keep your Chikurimon around. Now, Machinedramon is, of course, still great to digivolve on top of, and it is a cyborg, which means, again, you get those nice machine and cyborg synergies. So I think Machinedramon is going to be really interesting to try out. I absolutely intend to use him in the black bases if that is the route I decide to go, whether that be 2 copies, 3 copies, whatever. I'm definitely going to be testing this card out to see how effective it is at helping keep your board setup protected while you are working on getting into your early Machinedramons. Now, this version, I am also still going to be running 4 copies of Guardramon. Since we are in black base, I still think it is beneficial to make sure we are benefiting from the Digivolve Up abilities as much as we can. And Guardramon is still the best inheritable to give your level 5s. This is still going to be the best way to churn through your deck in black base, going into Guardramon and then digivolving into one of your EX1 cyborgs like Andromon or Metal Tyrannomon. That way, not only do you have an inheritable on attack, discard a machine or cyborg to draw 2, but then you're still getting to benefit from the when digivolvings, reveal your top 3, get a level 6 machine to your hand, and then trash the rest. This is going to be where black is really able to pull ahead in its card advantage engines, being able to drop so many cards so quickly. Now, whether or not we want to be seeing Sistermon Blanc in these kinds of lists, I think remains to be seen. Again, because since it is not a black card specifically, not being able to digivolve Machinedramon or Guardramon onto it does hurt us a little bit. With that being said, since we are playing 4 Sistermon and 4 Haguru, we now have the luxury of digivolving Haguru onto an egg, hard playing Sistermon Blanc, still benefiting from the draws, and then hopefully finding champions we can digivolve onto those eggs. So the play patterns may end up being worth it in this kind of a list. I'm, again, honestly not 100% sure. This is something that I'm really going to be looking forward to testing out as the format progresses to see kind of what works fluidly and what does not. Moving right along in this particular list, everything else is very similar to the red list we went over. We've got our Andromons, Metal Tyrannomons, Megadramons, pretty much all the same in our cyborg lineups. Same thing for our options here. We've still got our 3 Attack of the Heavy Metals. We've still got our 3 Ultimate Connections. And we are, in this build, still going to be playing just the 3 Memory Set Tamers. Now, again, there are going to be some flex spots in this list where you can potentially slot in copies of Kazu. if you would like to, as well as some other cards. Once again, like I said at the beginning, this is not a hard list. This is just a rough draft at this time. But I do think this list could probably benefit from having Kazu, but again, not having your Chikurimons or Sistermons count as machines or cyborgs is going to hurt Kazu's viability at least a little bit. It's not like you're losing everything by not running him. You've still got options to play memory setters, maybe cutting the 3 Ultimate Connection and playing the 3 Kazu instead could be something to go with. But this is, again, just a rough draft for a slightly different take on black base moving forward. All right, with that, we're going to move into our final base that we're going to be looking at, and this is much truer to the black base Machinedramon stack building list that I have been playing for the last couple of formats. So pretty much the same stuff on the bottom level. We are not going to be playing Sistermon, but we are still going to be playing for Pokemon as our eggs. That again could be Hotmon in this particular list because we are a little higher on our black tamers. But we're also going to be going back where I personally am liking to run still those 2 copies of our 2-drop rookie Hagurumon. It has come in super clutch in so many different games that I've played with it. So I'm going to be continuing to run that more than likely. This is probably pretty close to the list that I'm going to at least be starting with. I do kind of want to try Sistermon out, and like I said, I'll probably be trying all 3 of these lists out at different points, but this is pretty much very similar to the rookie base that I've had. The only difference is we are cutting the 4 copies of Commandramon or Chumon or whatever you wanted in that last slot for the 4 copies of the new Chikurimon for the reasons I've already mentioned. It's a phenomenal Floodgate moving forward. This list is also going to be opting to run 3, maybe even 4 copies of Macmon. I do, again, think this card is absolutely worth testing out, especially backing up the new Chikurimon. Keeping him alive is going to be very important. This list is also going to give us more options to actually Digivolve Macmon onto, so you're going to be less likely to need to Digivolve Macmon onto Chikurimon in order to get to your level 5s. So I think this is probably going to be the best list for Macmon's performance specifically, and I'm interested to see how this works. Still 4 copies of Gardramon. Our Cyborg lineup, pretty much unchanged. Ultimate Connection, I'm not super sold on in this list. This is 2 flex spots that could easily be other things. Could be Death Exmon, could be additional rookies and champions. It could be removal. It could also be a couple of different things. But for now, just as placeholders, I'm using 2 copies of Ultimate Connection in this list. And for all of my Kazu Copium friends, yes, I am going to still be playing 4 copies of Kazu in a list like this. I still think Kazu is one of the best tools this deck has. That stacking memory gain, the stacking ability to dig through your deck, it is phenomenal. It is a great complement to what you are already doing, building a stack with the black base. And I'm probably going to be sticking with 2 copies of Hero as my memory setter of choice. There's potential in this list that I instead swap into Izzy Azumi. If I ever decide, for instance, I may want to run copies of Grumblemon. That is a possibility. Swapping the 2 Hero into 2 copies of Izzy Azumi. Swapping the 2 Ultimate Connections into 2 copies of Grumblemon. That is a possibility that I could absolutely see working moving forward. But for now, this is the list that we're going to be looking at. With that, I honestly don't have too much more to say. I'm really actually liking the position that Machinedramon could potentially be in thanks to these new support cards coming up in BT10. With that, again, I want to thank you all so much for joining me for another video, and I appreciate your patience with all of the technical issues and hurricane-related things that I've had going on in the last week. Super glad to finally have my internet back. I've still got 2 more videos that I'm hoping to post later this week. They are actually going to be a Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile and my very first ever top 10 Magic the Gathering EDH or Commander video. I'm super excited for both of those. I have not made a lot of content for those games, but I still do very much enjoy playing them both, and I'm looking forward to actually posting some videos for other games that I enjoy playing as well. So keep your eyes open for those if you're interested in either of those games. I think both of those videos could be interesting. With that, if you guys enjoyed, feel free to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts on Machinedramon. Maybe there's some cards that you think are going to be really good in the format moving forward, and you'd like to share them. I would love to hear it. As always, thank you all so much for joining me. I am an avid herpetologist. Have a great rest of your night, and I will see you guys next time.